The awakening of the chosen. There are times in life when everything seems to be being aligned with invisible hands. Circumstances change, subtle signs begin to emerge, and a sense of silent orientation settles. For those who were chosen, this almost imperceptible movement is, in fact, the performance of a heavenly messenger, the angel sent by God. Its mission is not random, nor is it limited to an isolated act. It is part of a deep, personal, and sacred plane. Since ancient times, angels have been an essential role in the spiritual journey of the chosen ones. They are sent as guides, protectors, and messengers, especially when the soul awakens to a new purpose cycle. In the trajectory of who was called to something larger, the angel not only follows, he intervenes, protects from deviations, and offers subtle signs to lead the soul to the divine route. Many times he acts in silence without revealing himself, but leaving traces that only the attentive spirit can recognize. Its role is to conduct the chosen one in the midst of doubt, always remembering that there is a path outlined by God. But how do you know if an angel is trying to communicate with you? In general, the angelic approach takes place gently without fuss. It can begin with a sudden sensation of calm in the midst of chaos, thoughts that arise with clarity and strength, or even a dream that seems more real than the wake itself. An angel does not impose, but insists softly, repeating signs until the heart is ready to hear them. Synchronicity is one of your most powerful tools. You hear the same sentence in different places. You find messages that seem to have been written for you, or feel a presence that cannot be explained. The soul feels before the mind understands. It is also important to discern between angels, spiritual guides, and beings of light. They can all act for soul growth, but there are distinctions. The angel is a being of divine origin, created to fulfill specific missions in the service of God. He did not live human experiences, which makes him free from emotional and karmic limitations. Already the spiritual guides, in many cases, are consciousness that have lived on earth and now, with wisdom acquired, accompany certain souls. Light beings, in turn, are high consciences that can act as instructors at subtle levels, focusing on collective and individual evolution. All of these beings can manifest, but the angel carries a unique signature, to be sent directly by God, with a clear and non-transferable mission. The reason why certain angels are designated to certain people is deeply spiritual. This is not about human merit, but alignment with a greater mission. The angel is chosen according to the need for the soul that will receive it. He is designated even before the incarnation in many cases and expects the right time to act. When the soul awakens, the angel approaches more intensely. This is because the connection between the two has already been sealed on the spiritual plane, and the reunion is part of the fulfillment of the purpose. Some angels follow a person's life, others come only in key periods to transitions that require strength and direction. In all cases, the angel's presence is a reminder that heaven has not abandoned the chosen. On the contrary, he is investing in him. The performance of an angel is rarely accompanied by spectacular fanfare or manifestations. On the contrary, the signs of their presence are mostly subtle but deeply touching. When the soul begins to open to spiritual contact, these signs arise more often as minor confirmations that something greater is moving behind the scenes of visible reality. Physical signs are usually the first to manifest. A sudden chill with no apparent cause, a light shoulder touch when no one is around, a soft sound like bells or whispers that seem to come from another dimension. These events should not be ignored. They are like vibrational codes, delicate ways the angel finds to say, "I'm here." In times of prayer or contemplation, these manifestations can intensify, especially when the soul is receptive and the heart in silence. In addition to physicists, symbolic signs have their own language. Feathers found in unusual places, repeated numbers such as 111, 444, or 777, and even unusual animal behavior. All can be a disguised message. A butterfly that lands exactly the moment you say a prayer. A bird that sings whenever you think of a certain decision. The angel uses the creation around him to communicate truths that his mind cannot yet process, but that his intuition immediately recognizes. It is no coincidence. It is a connection. Speaking of intuition, emotional signs are perhaps the most intense and personal. A sudden peace in the midst of chaos. An inexplicable feeling that everything will be fine, even without logical reason. Sometimes the emotion is so strong that tears arise without words that can explain. This is the most direct touch of the angel over his soul. That's when he communicates without speaking, heals without playing, comforts without showing himself. Intuition tunes in, and you begin to realize when something does not vibrate right, or when a certain choice brings an almost palpable interior. In parallel to all this, messages that repeat outdoors arise. A phrase stamped on a street poster, an excerpt of music that seems to answer your doubt, a biblical verse that arises several times in different contexts. These repetitions are not the work of chance. They are orchestrated with spiritual accuracy, as the angel uses everything at their fingertips to ensure that the message reaches you. He knows that at many times his mind will try to rationalize the signs, so he repeats them until there is no doubt. The angelic presence, though invisible to the eyes, is fully tangible to the attentive spirit. Recognizing it is an act of sensitivity, but also of courage to believe that heaven still speaks, that God's messengers still walk among us, and that when the signs arise, it is because something sacred is being revealed. Before the angel manifests himself in a perceptible way, there is a silent call that precedes his arrival. It is like a breeze that touches the soul before the spiritual storm that comes to transform. This call does not scream, he whispers. He doesn't force it, invites. And who listens, even if without understanding, begins to move inwardly, as if something is about to happen. This is the invisible preparation that precedes visible contact. The first feeling is usually that something is coming. There are no logical explanations, but a feeling sets in. A feeling that the around the world remains the same, but inside it all starts to change. It is as if time slows down at certain times, and the soul began to capture that there is a transition in progress. This omen, far from being only psychological, is a deep spiritual perception. The angel has not yet turned out, but is already approaching. With this harbinger, many feel a sudden urge to isolate themselves or silence. It is not an escape, it is payment. The soul feels that it needs to hear something more subtle than the noise in the world can allow it. The urge to move away from distractions, of reducing stimuli, of being silent without knowing exactly why. This desire does not come from the mind. It is led by the spirit. The angel at this moment begins to play internal areas that can only be accessed in silence. It is in this space of stillness that he prepares the heart to receive it. In parallel, there is an intensification of spiritual dreams or visions. During sleep, the unconscious opens, and the spiritual plane finds less resistance. Vived dreams with sacred symbols, encounters with light figures, or dream experiences that arouse intense emotions are clear indicators that contact is being prepared. Some visions can happen even in a wakefulness, in times of deep introspection. In these experiments, time seems to dilate, and a clearer message begins to emerge. In the midst of this process, spiritual pressure arises to make important decisions. Things that were being postponed by fear, doubt, or insecurity become urgent. There is an invisible force pushing you to break cycles, close doors, align attitudes. The angel, still invisible, is already starting to prepare the terrain. He cannot act in the midst of confusion or indecision, so the soul is pressured to position itself. This pressure may be uncomfortable, but it is necessary. It is the spirit alerting. It is time to align, for something divine is on its way. This call prior to angelic contact is like the breaking of dawn before sunrise. It is smooth but inevitable. He prepares, purifies, and awakens, and those who listen carefully understand. Before the angel arrives, the soul needs to be ready to receive it. Even when the angel is designated and ready to act, his performance can be limited by blockages generated in the field of his own soul. Unlike human beings, angels respect the sacred free will granted by God. They do not impose their presence or force their help. They only intervene when they find opening. And often this opening is obstructed by invisible but spiritually dense barriers. The first of these is doubt and excessive rationalization. When the mind completely dominates spiritual experience, trying to explain each sign with cold logic, the channel of perception closes. The angel speaks to intuition, the most subtle senses of the soul, but meets a mind that only accepts what can be proved, measured, or explained. The doubt is like a thick mist that covers the signs, discredits dreams, and reduces faith to assumptions. Excessive intellectual control does not protect. It isolates. It is necessary to make room for mystery, trust even without seeing, feel even without fully understood. Another powerful barrier is the presence of dense energy or negative environments. The angel, being a messenger of light, finds it difficult to act in places where spiritual vibration is constantly sucked by conflicts, clods, addictions, or lack of reverence. Environments marked by discord or disrespect to sacredness become dark in the eyes of the spirit. In these spaces, the angelic presence moves away, not out of disability, but out of respect for spiritual laws. The same goes for the person's own energy field. Untreated hurts, resentments, and self-destructive habits create a weight that makes it difficult to access light. Connection with people or habits that block their light also prevents angelic acting. There are bonds that, although effective or comfortable, function as anchors that keep the soul attached to patterns that do not favor growth. The angel may even try to warn, but if the soul insists on remaining linked to influences that sabotage its progress, the flow of revelations is interrupted. Similarly, habits that seem harmless but generate spiritual distancing, such as constant use of distractions, lack of inner silence, or continuous exposure to negative content, slowly closing contact portals. Finally, there is the unconscious fear of assuming its own mission. Many deep down know they were called to something bigger, but they retract from the responsibility that this requires. The angel may be there, next door, ready to guide, but the soul still hesitates, fear of leaving the comfort of the known zone. This fear is not always evident. Sometimes he camouflages himself into excuses, postponements, or false beliefs of inadequacy, but the effect is the same. The angel expects, because it cannot force a step that only the soul can take. Identifying these barriers is the first liberation movement. By recognizing the blocks and deciding to eliminate them, the soul begins to make room for divine act. The angel does not require perfection, but willingness. Where there is sincerity and delivery, he finds passage, and where there is light, he reveals the way. When the angel is near and the soul begins to awaken to the possibility of contact, a crucial step begins: the preparation. Unlike any other form of communication, connection with a heavenly messenger requires not only faith but active intention. It is not about waiting passively for a miracle, but of creating the ideal conditions for him to manifest. Just as the farmer prepares the earth before sowing, the spirit must prepare to receive the guidance from above. The first stage of this preparation is intentional energy cleaning. It is not enough just to move away from what is toxic. It is necessary to purify what has been accumulated. This can be done through baths with sacred herbs, conscious breathing practices, liberation meditations, and even the simple act of opening windows, letting the light come in and allow renewal to reach the physical and spiritual environment. This cleaning is more effective when done with conscience, accompanied by prayer and the intention to let go of everything that is not aligned with the divine purpose. Then comes the statements of readiness and delivery. They act as spiritual contracts. By verbalizing with faith that you are ready to listen, follow, and trust, you issue a frequency that reaches the celestial spheres. Phrases such as, "I am ready to be guided," "I give my will to divine direction," or "I accept the mission entrusted to me," are not just words. They are vibrational statements that communicate to the spiritual world that the gates are open. The angel respects the time of the soul, but immediately responds to the heart that puts himself in true availability. Another important step is to establish a sacred space for contact. It can be a corner of the room, a simple altar, an area in nature, or any place where inner peace can flourish. This space, when consecrated with love and intention, becomes a point of connection between the plans. There, the angelic presence becomes more palpable, and the signs flow more clearly. Keeping this space clean, silent, and energized is like keeping the door always open for the visit of the divine. Finally, there are spiritual tools that act as activators: prayer and fasting. Prayer, when made with truth, is not a hasty request. It is a conversation, a surrender, a moment of deep intimacy with God. It strengthens tuning and purifies the mind. Fasting, whether food, digital, or emotional, has the power to silence the noise of the body and open the channels of the soul. When fasting, you send a clear sign to the spirit world that you are willing to rise, to leave the ordinary, to touch the sacred. Preparation is not an empty ritual. She is in itself an invitation. When the soul moves upwards, the sky responds. And the angel, realizing this opening gesture, approaches more intensely. What seemed distant begins to become possible, and the invisible gradually gains shape. When the soul is clean, open, and willing, the angelic contact not only becomes possible, it becomes inevitable. And while this...
Have you ever stopped to wonder why, despite all your achievements, it feels like something essential is still missing? My name is Gabriel, and I've helped countless people like you discover the true spiritual power that resides within them. And today, I want to help you. If you feel like life is passing by while something important remains out of place, maybe it's time for an awakening. My audiobook, The Path of the Chosen, was created precisely for those who have reached this point. In this audiobook, I guide you to feel that enthusiasm for living in alignment with what truly matters, knowing that every step has meaning. Together, we'll transform your fears, traumas, and frustrations into powerful strengths that propel you to a new level of growth. Leave behind the feeling of spiritual isolation and find the peace of a true, constant connection with a greater energy that has always been by your side. Instead of fighting against what you feel, you'll learn to find purpose, serenity, and self-discovery to fill your inner world. This could be the beginning of a fuller, more meaningful life. I've seen it happen for so many others, and now it's your turn. Don't let this opportunity slip by. Click on the link pinned in the first comment and begin this journey with the Path of the Chosen. This is your chance to fill what's missing and finally live the life you deserve. I'll be waiting for you there.
Moment does not follow a fixed pattern, for each spirit receives according to its sensitivity and mission. There are common manifestations that clearly indicate that the angel has finally proved. These are moments of inner rupture, where the sacred crosses the routine and touches the heart undeniable. One of the most recurring forms of manifestation happens through vivid dreams with messages or instructions. These dreams are different from common. They carry surprising lucidity, an atmosphere of peace or solemnity, and in many cases a clear and direct message. The angel can appear as a luminous figure, or even in symbolic forms such as a being of light, a child, or a messenger who transmits something that the soul understands intuitively. At awakening, the impact of the dream remains alive, and often it comes with a spiritual urgency to act. Another remarkable form is the presence of a soft voice, or clear and direct thoughts that appear suddenly. It is not a hallucination or mental confusion, but a communication that invades consciousness with clarity, lightness, and firmness. It may be a phrase that appears out of nowhere in the midst of a dilemma, an answer that comes before the question is done, or an internal certainty that does not come from logic. The angel's voice does not impose it. She guides with sweetness and spiritual authority. She is felt more than heard, but leaves deep marks. In states of meditation or recollection, many experience the vision or image of a being of light. This view can last seconds, or it seems to extend for a while out of time. The angel shows himself as a soft presence wrapped in brightness, peace, and heat. There is no fear, there is reverence. The angel's gaze, even if he does not manifest himself literally, conveys a truth that silences all doubt. In some cases, it is not the angel itself that appears, but an explosion of white, gold, or bluish light accompanied by a sense of immense love and belonging. But perhaps the most powerful manifestation is one that is accompanied by intense emotions, followed by an inexplicable inner peace. These are times when the heart seems to expand, the body feels heat or chill, and a wave of love takes over the whole being. In the midst of crying, silence, or prayer, the angel touches the deepest of the soul, and there all resistance dissolves. This peace does not come from outside, but from within. It does not depend on circumstances, and so it is so striking. It is as if the spirit had been embraced by something eternal. Each manifestation is unique, and they do not always come with spectacular signs. Sometimes the contact occurs in daily life, in a break, in a gesture of unexpected kindness, in a word that touches it as if blown from heaven. What matters is not the format, but the transformation that happens later. Because since the angel touches the soul, nothing remains the same. The reality changes. The mission had been hampered. And the path that was previously uncertain is now sacred. When angelic contact happens, even if subtly, it always requires an answer. The angel doesn't just come to comfort or convey beautiful words, he comes to drive. And this driving requires a firm attitude, an initial movement that opens the doors to everything that will come. There is a point of turning on the spiritual journey, and it begins when the soul decides, sincerely, to take the first step. This step begins by saying yes sincerely to its mission. Not a superficial yes, said with fear or to please, but a deep yes that is born from the intimate and extends as a spiritual pact. This consent is not something that is done only once, but a continuous disposition to cooperate with divine designs. It is when the soul bends in the face of the purpose entrusted to it, even without understanding all the details, and agrees to be led by a superior intelligence. The sincere yes echoes in heavens as a key that opens the path of revelation. After this consent, it is necessary to act on something that is being requested intuitively. The angel speaks, but who needs to move is you. Often the orientation has already been given, whether in a dream, a recurring intuition, a clear impulse that repeats itself. And the wait for more signs can actually be a postponement disguised as prudence. Faith needs to translate into action. Be to start a project, resume spiritual practice, talk to someone, change environment, or simply stop something that has been draining your energy. This initial movement is what signals the spirit world. I am ready to cooperate. This action step, however, will almost always be accompanied by a call to break with something you know you need to leave. It can be a habit, a relationship, a fixed idea, or even an old fear. The angel does not act on unstable terrain, and therefore often his first guidance will be, release what no longer serves. This break, however difficult, is not a punishment. It is liberation. Abandoning what limits, you make room to receive what he came to deliver. And there is a silent but powerful posture that sustains it all, to be grateful before you even see the result. Gratitude is one of the highest frequencies of the soul. When you thank you even before you have received, you already connect with the future reality being prepared. This gratitude is not just for what comes, but for the confidence that what comes will be the best. The soul he thanks before seeing demonstrates spiritual maturity, and this maturity attracts more revelations, more direction, more miracles. The first step is always the most important. He doesn't have to be perfect, just true. The angel is already by his side, but now heaven waits for its movement, because when the spirit says yes with the heart, the invisible becomes real, and it all starts to happen. It is a visually angelic visit. When an angel manifests itself, even in silence or by almost imperceptible signs, it is because there is something sacred in motion. The purpose of this visit goes far beyond comfort or protection. It is a turning point on the spiritual destiny of the receiving it. The angel does not just come to be next door. He comes to activate, confirm, protect, and reveal. One of the main reasons for visiting an angel is to activate dormant spiritual gifts. Throughout life, many gifts remain latent, waiting for the right time to emerge. Subtle perceptions, healing skills, prophetic sensitivity, words that touch, eyes that see beyond. These gifts are not learned, but remembered. The angel, as he approaches, touches areas of the soul that were dormant and releases capacities that were hidden. What once seemed just a light intuition becomes a revelation channel. His presence works like a spark that arouses what was always there, but had not yet been activated. Another essential purpose of the angelic visit is to confirm the path you should follow. In times of uncertainty, doubt, or confusion, the angel appears as a living response. It doesn't necessarily change direction, but confirms the one that, deep down, you already knew it is the right one. This confirmation may come through repeated signs, specific words, meetings marked by providence, or simply by the inner peace that arises when considering a particular decision. The angel does not force, but illuminates. He shows the way and says, without words, "It is here." In addition, the visit may have a protection character. Often the angel intervenes to protect you from a great distraction or trap. It may be a decision that looked good, but it would lead to a spiritual deviation. It can be a relationship, an opportunity, or even a project that, although attractive, would remove it from its essence. The angel at this time can cause discomfort, delays, doors that close, or unexpected twists. And all this, in fact, is deliverance. It does not prevent what you want, but protects what you really need. Its mission is to preserve the divine plan, even if the soul still does not understand the details. Finally, there are cases where the angel manifests himself to deliver a revelation about the collective. This happens especially with those who were called not only for their own transformation, but to guide others. The angel can reveal something about the time we are living, about a group, a city, or even an entire generation. This revelation comes with spiritual weight, but also with clear direction. It is not only to be received, but to be shared at the right time. In this case, the angel acts as an emissary of heaven to earth, using you as a channel. The purpose of the angelic visit always has a divine root, aligning you with what God dreamed for your life. There is no visit in vain. Each presence, each sign, each message has a sacred reason. And when you understand this, it begins to live with more open eyes, more sensitive heart, and firmer steps. Because now you know there is a greater purpose in everything, and it is being revealed. An angel's visit is a milestone, but not an end point. It is the beginning of a new, more conscious, brighter, and therefore more challenging stage. As the heaven approaches, the darkness around themselves. And it is common that, After angelic contact, trials begin to emerge that test not only faith but also the firmness of the commitment made. These are challenges that do not indicate divine abandonment, but a spiritual refinement necessary to consolidate what was revealed. The first type of trial is usually the subtle and emotional spiritual attack. It is not necessarily about something visible or direct. It is often a mist that settles over the mind, an unjust restlessness, an emotional oscillation that tries to weaken the newly established connection. Ancient doubts come back hard. Thoughts of discouragement arise without warning, and the clarity that once seemed absolute begins to be questioned. This is a common movement when light comes on dash, because where there is light, the shadows shake. The angel is still present, but at that moment it is the soul who must keep the vigil. Then there are unexpected reactions from close people. Friendships move away without explanation. Ties before firm begin to break. And there are even those who ridicule or discredit what you lived. This does not happen by chance. Many times the light you have been carrying bothers those who are not yet ready to see. And in other cases, the angel allows certain bonds to be tested, revealing what must remain and what has already fulfilled its cycle. These reactions, though painful, help separate what is truly a covenant from what was only emotional convenience. One of the deepest trials is the spiritual silence that at times seems to abandon. After intense experiences, clear signs, and emotional touches, the sky seems to silence. Prayers no longer bring the same sensations, dreams cease, and the presence of the angel seems distant. This silence is not absence, it is an invitation to maturity. God allows this interval for faith to strengthen, so that you learn to walk without having to see all the time. It is the moment when confidence is purifier, and inner certainty replaces dependence on external signs. Finally, tests of faith arise through unexpected situations. Doors that suddenly close, losses that were not on the plan, changes that require quick decisions. Everything seems out of place, and the soul is challenged to remember the promise received. The angel does not prevent the tests, but accompanies each one of them. He observes silent, hoping that the soul firm in what he already knows, even when everything seems to say otherwise. These tests do not come to destroy, come to consolidate. They are like fire that purifies gold. Tests after contact are not punishment, but confirmations. They show that something valuable has been received, and therefore needs to be preserved. The soul that perseveres in this period becomes stronger, more sensitive, and more faithful to purpose. And when the winds of trial cease, what remains is a mature spirit, capable of carrying the light it received responsibly and firmly. Contact with the angel is not an isolated event, but the beginning of a continuous spiritual covenant. However, maintaining this living connection requires awareness, discipline, and reverence. Like any deep relationship, it needs to be cultivated. The angel remains beside, but it is up to the soul to support this bond with practical and spiritually aligned attitudes. Contact may even start spontaneously, but its permanence is built day after day. One of the most effective ways to maintain this connection is to create a daily ritual of alignment. It may be in the morning, upon waking, or at night before bed. The important thing is that it is constant. This ritual need not be long or complex, but it must be done with truth. It may involve a silent prayer, guided meditation, a sacred reading, or simply a moment of gratitude. This time reserved communicates to the angel, I am available. The constancy in this small gesture opens deep channels and strengthens the spiritual link. It is also essential to continue asking for signs and confirmation, not out of suspicion, but out of tune. Angels rejoice in confirming their presence and often await this request as a permission to act. When you ask for a signal, you reaffirm your opening. And when he comes, because it will come, it is important to recognize, thank, and answer with action. This exchange forms a spiritual language that becomes increasingly intimate. You learn to listen, and the angel becomes clearer. Another fundamental practice is to cultivate purity and spiritual sensitivity. This does not mean perfection, but vigilance. Avoid excesses, feed on high content, wisely choose companies and environments. All helps to maintain the frequency of the tuned spirit. The angel vibrates in light, and the lighter his soul is, the more easily he manifests himself. Attitudes such as forgiveness, compassion, humility, and truth not only protect your connection, but deepen it. Finally, there is a silent and powerful gesture that strengthens this covenant. Honoring the angel's presence with concrete actions. It is not enough to feel. It is necessary to live the mission. If you received guidance, fulfill it. If it was called to serve, serve. If it was healed, cure. Every step you take toward the mission you were touched is a way of saying, I remember who sent me. The angel gets even closer to those who respond with attitudes. And where there is faithfulness to the light received, there is constant revelation. Staying connected to the angel is not just a spiritual search, it is a form of life, a journey in which the invisible becomes a daily partner, and the sacred manifests itself in everyday life. The connection, when cared for, deepens, and with it, it comes to shore. You will never be alone. When the connection with the angel is kept alive, firm and constant, the fruits begin to sprout inevitably. They do not all come at once, not always in the expected way, but manifest themselves with depth and clarity. The angelic presence not only changes outside life, it transforms inner perception. And it is from this internal change that the whole reality around it begins to reorganize. The first fruit is a total change in the perception of reality. What once seemed common now carries a greater meaning. The signs of everyday life become dialogues with the divine. The difficulties are no longer punishment and are understood as refinement processes. Spiritual vision expands, and the soul begins to see behind the veil. People, situations, and choices are understood more deeply. This new way of seeing is not illusory. It is awake. The soul comes to live in constant attention, with eyes turned to what is eternal. Another powerful fruit is deep peace, even in the midst of chaos. This peace does not come from the absence of problems, but from the continuous presence of the angel. It is as if, even in the middle of the storm, a soft light involved the spirit and said, "You are being guided." The previously paralyzed fears lose strength, and uncertainties no longer dominate. There is a silent confidence, an inner certainty that everything is being led. This peace is the clearest sign that contact has not only been made, but it is active. With this peace also comes the opening of impossible ways. Doors that were closed begin to open suddenly. What seemed blocked for years unlocked with fluidity. Not because there was magic, but because the soul, when aligning with purpose, began to walk in harmony with God's time. The angel acts as a key, unlocking connections, sending the right people, organizing the circumstances to flow everything according to the divine plan. Synchronities become intense, and the paths reveal themselves with surprising sharpness. And the most impactful of the fruits is the performance of personal and collective miracles. Miracles not in the spectacular sense, but as clear interventions of heaven on earth. A diagnosis that reverses itself, a relationship that reconciles itself, a soul that awakens, an environment that transforms. All of this begins to happen around those who maintain their covenant with the angel, because where there is constant light, there is transformation. And the light, when it is true, never illuminates only those who carry it. It spreads. The fruits of the connection with the angel are, in essence, living evidence of God's presence acting. They confirm that contact was not imagination, that the delivery was not in vain, and that the mission is fulfilling itself. These fruits, once harvested, renew faith, expand gratitude, and inspire others to seek the same path. Because the true sign that the angel has gone through a life is the visible transformation she carries later